Jadon Sancho is free from Man United for the season, though. At the transfer deadline, he got loaned out to Aston Villa for the rest of the season. Now, to me, this is going to be kind of a lose-lose situation because Man United aren't really free of Jadon Sancho. And Aston Villa are just picking up 80% of the wages for the whole year. And if he ends up being good, he's really just going to up the value for Man United with no option to buy, with no, basically, there's no way that they could sign him for a fair deal in case Jadon Sancho ends up turning up. But to be fair, the way they kind of handled Marcus Rashford, it doesn't really seem like Aston Villa are going to be bringing in Sancho back in next season, no matter what, because I think Marcus Rashford proved that he should be on Villa the following year. He proved it so much that he ends up on Barcelona. So to me, Villa doesn't really have any interest in taking Sancho for the future, which this move doesn't really make sense, in my opinion, aside from giving Unai Emery an attacking option up top after losing, the likes of Asensio and Rashford that they had last season. But this is the thing. He kind of screwed over Man United. Well, he mostly screwed up Emi Martinez because this deal could have been permanent because Villa wanted to get rid of Emi Martinez and his huge wages. Man United needed a goalkeeper, and Jadon Sancho needed a new home. But Jadon Sancho ends up taking down this swap. It would have been basically Emi Martinez to United, Sancho to Villa on a permanent. But many people were like, why doesn't Sancho want to go to Villa on a permanent? Well, I have to tell you, it has to do with his wages. Right now, Jadon Sancho is at an immense amount of wages, and the day he gets a new contract, those wages will diminish. They are going to decrease at a high rate due to his performances in recent years. He is getting, close to 300,000 a week. Close to. Not 300,000, but close to. If he ends up signing, if he would have signed on a permanent somewhere, he would have got no more than 150, possibly even just 100,000. And that would just depend on the club he would go to and how much they're willing to offer. But Sancho did not want to let go of those wages he's on. That's really the only reason why he didn't want to leave on a permanent. If Villa offered him the same amount of wages he's on now, he would have definitely done that permanently. But the whole point was to get rid of Emi Martinez's wages. And to be honest, they'd rather keep Emi Martinez and get Jadon Sancho on loan than end up with both of them with long-term, with huge wages. Instead, they get a little discount on Sancho's wages and they just have to pay it for the season. And he's just an option going forward. And then they keep Emi Martinez in goal, while Man United now get to go after Layman's, who they eventually did sign. But that was just all about wages. Jadon Sancho's a bit money hungry right now. He got a fat contract and he's going to make sure he keeps that fat contract one way or another, even if he has to go on loan for the rest of his contract, But at the end of the day, this is probably one of the worst transfers, aside from Anthony, that Man United have ever had, because in total they have spent 150 million on Sancho and they really haven't even had a good season from him. If anything, they've just had a couple moments. His game away from Villarreal, his game against Liverpool where he had that goal, in his debut season. He has little moments here and there, but genuinely, he really hasn't showed any sort of talent for Man United. Instead, they've honestly spent more on wages on him playing for other clubs like Dortmund, Chelsea, and now Villa than they have paying his wages to play for Man United as a whole. Which is kind of crazy to me because I remember when he was at Dortmund, the whole world was all about him. And then Man United ended up signing him. It was a big deal because he came from City's academy. And now he absolutely flopped. You think it was an actual City fan absolutely stinking it up after a pretty huge transfer to Man United. So this is just kind of the embodiment of Man United in the transfer window the past 3-4 years. You go out and get a huge player, the Harry Maguire, Jadon Sancho, Anthony, all these huge transfers, Højlund, and they just don't work out and you end up letting them go for little to nothing. Little to nothing. And that's literally Man United as a whole in the transfer market. Clubs, when they get the ring from Man United for their player, they're celebrating because they know they're going to get triple what the actual value is. That's genuinely it. That clip in The Wolf of Wall Street when Jordan Belfort is, selling that stock with everybody watching and he's doing he's thrusting the air, he's flicking off the phone. That is literally Ajax when they called for Anthony, Dortmund when they called for Sancho, Leicester when they called for Maguire. Ajax when they called for Onana, Ajax when they called for Lissandro Martinez, the Atalanta when they cut. I can get on and on. And that's just it. Man United are literally those people who go on TikTok and they see one guy showing off a lifestyle and selling a course on how to get rich in 2 days. That's literally Man United falling for it every time. And they get a new course, new course, new course, new course, and they just spend all this money on courses, and then they don't make anything in return. And if anything, they're down now because they've spent everything on all these new courses. That's Man United in a nutshell. But this is something interesting that I seen about Jadon Sancho here. A story came out saying that, Chelsea's president, he's not really the president, but Todd Bowley, one of the owners, basically came out and said they had an agreement to buy him at 20 million, but the player in the last season did not show up to several training sessions once, not even to the stadium for the match. Not even to the stadium for the match. He spent the night chatting with his girlfriend, slept during the day, and when he had 2 days off, he went to Los Angeles to see his beloved. For the reason we preferred to pay the penalty. Now, this came out as a fake quote, but I feel like there's a lot of truth to it because 20 million for a player of Jadon Sancho's talent isn't too bad. As long as you can get those wages down, it's not a bad transfer. And then considering they went out and bought a bunch of attackers, to me, there's a lot of truth to this because Jadon Sancho really had it easy to go to Chelsea. As bad as he was, Chelsea seemed to somehow make profits on all these players. Joao Felix came in, somehow made a profit. Madueke came in, somehow made a profit. They are actually buying the courses and somehow making a little bit of profit off it, So it really made sense for Chelsea to take up this 20 mil fee and then eventually get 40 million off Sancho if he showed some sort of promise. And for them to just not want to even do that kind of shows that there's something more to the story when it comes to Sancho. So I feel like this is actually true. It's just PR coming in and, trying to market as false. But there's going to be some truth to this because this is some things that Sancho probably has done. If you consider you didn't really see him much at the games that he was injured, you wouldn't see him in the stands. Many times players would show up still. He does have the girlfriend in Los Angeles. He was given days off. All of these things could be true, and that's why the story had so much traction when it first came out because it's a realistic story and it makes sense. I feel like this is just a PR defense where they're coming out and just kind of like saying, "Oh yeah, Fabrizio, who's known to be a Chelsea defender, come out and say label it as fake, please and thank you. This wasn't supposed to come out." I could definitely see that coming out, but. At the moment, it's labeled as fake, but I could definitely see it happening. It's just a PR defense right there. But anyways, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below. What do you think about Sancho to Villa? And do you think this story is real? I personally think there's a lot of truth to it. Maybe it's not 100% real, but I feel like a lot of the things said may be true.